everyone, welcome back. My name is Sarah and I want to thank you for joining in for lesson 4 today. Thanks as well for sending in all of your photos for lesson 3, which was on texture. It looks like you guys were having a lot of fun exploring and looking for all the different types of surfaces that are out there. And some really great photos submitted. So make sure you go and check out the slideshow from lesson 3. I'll link it below for you guys so you can click and watch it after. One thing I wanted to sort of bring up before we get into lesson 4 was talking a little bit about what happens if you don't really like or aren't sure if you like what the lesson is on. And one of the great things about photography is that it's a way for you to explore. So always trying things first before deciding if it's what you really like taking photos of. You might learn something from one of the lessons that you can apply to taking photos of something you do like. So always try to look on the exploration side of things and try to find new ways of doing things, and then apply it to the photos you like taking photos of. So don't get discouraged. Okay, so this week we are going to talk about leading lines and the way that we use leading lines in our photos to make the photos more interesting to the people that are looking at them. You can kind of think of leading lines as a way for you to show the viewer where to look in the photo. It's kind of like taking them on a walk down a pathway. Leading lines can occur in nature. So if you think of a leaf and how the leaf has little veins growing through it that sort of when it spreads out, those are leading lines. It can also occur in man-made things like buildings or a pathway on a bridge. You've got the railing. That's a leading line. And we use these leading lines in our photos to help the viewers follow along and explore what's in our photos. So why don't we take a look at a few examples that will help show you exactly what leading lines look like and what they can do for our photos. Okay, so let's take a look at a few examples. Here we have an example of a leading line that occurs in nature. We have the pathway that's kind of curving through the frame and you want to follow along that pathway to see where it goes. Here we have the leading lines of the road leading towards the 2 dogs at the end. So we have these lines that we follow along to look towards the dogs. Here's kind of a funny one, something that may occur that is man-made. We have kind of this caravan, an RV on the side, and we've got the line. We follow along that line until we reach the chicken. Here's another example of something that we've made. This is a building, and if we follow the lines of the building, we want to look all the way up to the top. So buildings are a great example of lines and leading lines that guide the viewer to look all the way to the top of the building. You might also find a bridge. This here is the Sea to Sky Gondola Bridge up in the mountains in BC, and I was standing on one end of the bridge and kind of afraid to go across to the other side, but these lines, you want to look all the way down to the other end of the bridge, and if you look closely, there's a little person standing there, and then we've got the big mountain behind them. So it can occur, something that we've made. We can look and find these lines. It can also be something that might be a little bit more abstract and that not really known what it is. Here is a picture of some pipes on the side of a building, and I really liked it because they're curving. They go up and down and to the side, and you want to follow along where those pipes are going. Here is an example. This is Bike to Work Week, an example of kids doing a bicycle obstacle course. And you can see there's a pathway with the little cones that they have to follow in with their bikes. So this is another example of a pathway where the path kind of leads through the photo and we follow along. Here's an example of a pathway that is going through a forest. So this is an example of a bit of a curved line. We have the path that kind of goes one way and then the next way, and it goes all the way through the frame, all the way through the photo. We can take a look at where this leading line is going. Here's another example. We have a pathway that the bicyclists are cycling down, and they get smaller and smaller as they get towards the end of the photo, but we want to follow along and see where the cyclists are going. So we've got this leading line in the bit of a forest pathway. And here's an example of the footbridge going into Assiniboine Park. We have this bridge that kind of goes down the middle, and we want to follow along and make our way over to the forest part of the park. Now this one's a little bit harder to see because we've got all kinds of boats on the water on the bottom part of the photo, but if you look closely at the top, the clouds are there's about 3 or 4 lines there, and they're all kind of pointing towards the top of the sails of the boats. So this is more of what we call that abstract leading lines, where the cloud lines are making their way from one side of the photo all the way over to the other side of the photo. We can have sort of squiggly, curvy lines as well. This is an example of the lines that are on a tree that has fallen down. So we have the bark, and we have all of these lines, and they kind of lead to the back of the photo. Another example of squiggly lines, these are vine roots that have made their way up on a wall, but I decided to get down really low and look up at how the lines kind of make their way all the way to the top of the wall. So again, exploring your points of view, getting up or getting down, and seeing how those lines move throughout the frame. They kind of go from one side of the photo, and then they squiggle their way over to the other side of the photo. Here's an example of farmers' fields that have squiggly lines. So we've got a number of sort of curved lines as they make their way through the photo. And you can also see leading lines in things like tunnels or archways. Here we've got a tunnel with a kind of wooden roof, and if we look down, the tunnel keeps going on and on and on and on, and those leading lines make us want to keep going and see where they lead to. Another example of leading lines, here we have sort of an alleyway, and if you look at the lines on the stone floor or the stone sidewalk, and then also the lines of the buildings, it's this pathway that we want to keep going down. You can have curved lines that sort of guide you as well. Here I've got an example of sort of curved arches. There's a number of them, and they keep moving through the frame to the building that we look at on the back. Now, I wanted to show you a few examples of what happens when you change your point of view to the lines that are in your photo. Here's an example of a walkway. It's an arched walkway, and you can see I'm standing and looking straight down the archway, and I've got these great lines that create this path that goes through the middle of the photo. But if I change my point of view and I move a little bit to the right, now I see a different point of view. It's the same hallway, but it looks very different. So you're always wanting to get out and explore, find your leading lines, and then play with it a little bit. Move left, move right, move up or move down. Now, one of the things that you'll want to pay attention to when you're taking photos of leading lines is where you are positioned. Now, does this sound familiar? Do you feel like you maybe have practiced this one before? You got it. Your point of view is really important when you're bringing in leading lines into your photos, because your point of view will help get your viewers' eye where they're looking towards what you want them to in the photo. So things to look out for with lines when you're out and about. Maybe you can look for trees in a forest. You can look for lines on pathways or walkways. You can look at the lines that are in buildings or even in your house, for example. You'll want to get creative and explore lots of different points of view. So you can see how what we learned in lesson 2 is really kind of applicable to all types of photos. You really want to get out and explore things. You can look for straight lines or diagonal lines, and you can also have curved lines. So there's lots of different types of lines that you can bring into your photos to make them more interesting to your viewers. You can even try changing up different points of view. So find a line and then move around. Move to the left, move to the right, maybe move up or down, and see how that changes your photo. Watch how as you move, the lines move, and in turn, it changes where your eye goes in the photo. All right, so your assignment for this week is to keep on exploring. But this time, what you're going to do is look for leading lines. Now, you can look for them both in nature, so think outside, or something man-made, so buildings or your house. Look for leading lines. And then continue to explore those different points of view to see how that changes the lines in your photos. Once you're done taking all of your photos, what I'd like you to do is take a look through all of them and see if there's a type of leading line or a certain point of view that you really like more than the others. Maybe it's you like crouching down and seeing how that changes your lines. Or maybe it's standing off to the side. But take a look through and see if there's one angle of view, one point of view for the lines that you like the most. Then, if you're participating, you can submit 5 of your favorite photos to me. You can email me, and I will get them put up in the weekly slideshow. So, I hope you guys have a lot of fun this week. Get out there and explore looking for leading lines, and I will wait and look forward to seeing your images. Until then, we'll see you guys next time. Bye! Oh, almost forget, I always forget. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel because then you can get the updates to the next lesson, which is going to be lesson 5. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye!